All right, welcome to the show, everybody. Today, I got a beefy one for you. So, there were some explosive revelations that just came out of the January 6th committee yesterday. We're going to cover that. Now, certain parts of the testimony are being refuted. I'll tell you where the refutations are, but a lot of the stuff is not being refuted. And I'd say there's probably 7 or 8 things that we learned in the testimony that are pretty damning, to say the least. Also today, Ghislaine, I don't know how to say her name properly. I don't think anybody actually does. She just got sentenced in the Epstein trafficking case. We'll talk about that. We got Rudy Giuliani. I'm sure you guys have seen this story by now. He basically claimed that he got assaulted. It is the fakest claim I've ever seen in my entire life. It's so fake that even Newsmax hosts, and Newsmax is to the right of Fox News, for those of you who don't know that, even they're coming out like, I don't know, dog. That doesn't really look like an assault to me. So we'll talk about that. And then, of course, there's still stuff on Roe versus Wade. Kamala Harris flubbed a CNN interview. We got these anti-drag queen Republicans who were caught for years, if not decades, going to drag shows. There's so much to say about that. Megyn Kelly versus AOC. The story that I've been meaning to catch everybody up on is a story about prayer in school, or at the very least, prayer for extracurricular activities where you have school employees there. So I'll give you all the facts of that case. And look, in my estimation, and you guys can determine whether or not you agree, it looks to me like the Supreme Court just took a hatchet to separation of church and state. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started here. I want to give you guys the update on the January 6th committee and why everybody was abuzz yesterday. So Cassidy Hutchinson was a senior aide to the White House chief of staff at the time, Mark Meadows. And she was there during the January 6th riot. And she testified in front of the committee, and she had quite a few things to say. So let's read through a little bit of the thread here from NBC News. Cassidy Hutchinson testified about conversations she had with White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows. Quote, "There's a lot going on, Cass, but I don't know. Things might get real bad on January 6th. Hutchinson recalls him telling her. So this first thing here is to indicate that prior to January 6th, people in Trump world knew that, hey man, this could get really ugly. I don't like what I'm hearing. I don't like what I'm seeing. I don't like the players who are involved. There's, of course, that famous video of Steve Bannon on his podcast saying, effectively like, watch out on January 6th. It's happening. And this means that at the highest levels of the Trump administration, they knew, hey, something's up and violence might be coming. So that's the first thing that we learned, which, you might say, duh. But at the same time, you got a million little pieces of the puzzle that are kind of coming together over time, and it's painting a very clear picture about Trump's intentions at the time. And boy, oh boy, is there more that paints that picture on his intentions. So let's continue here. Hutchinson testifies that when Rudy Giuliani told her on January 2nd that they would go to the Capitol on January 6th, she was, quote, scared. That evening was the first moment that I remember feeling scared and nervous for what could happen on January 6th, she said. Cassidy Hutchinson said in a videotaped testimony that when she attended the January 6th rally at the White House Ellipse, she overheard the president say, he knew people had many weapons, but he didn't care. We have a more direct quote on that coming up in a second. Quote, here, I'll just play the video for you instead of reading it.
I saw Mr. Cipollone right before I walked out onto West Exec that morning, and Mr. Cipollone said something to the effect of, please make sure we don't go up to the Capitol, Cassidy. Keep in touch with me. We're going to get charged with every crime imaginable if we make that movement happen.
And do you remember?
So it sounds like they know what's coming. It sounds like they have a good idea of how ugly it can get. And they're saying, look, we got to stay away because if we go, we're going to be criminally liable for inciting this to happen.
Which crimes Mr. Cipollone was concerned with?
In the days leading up to the 6th, we had conversations about potentially obstructing justice or defrauding the electoral count. I saw...
Wow. Okay. Now, it gets deeper and deeper. Now, I will say, okay, so this next one that you're about to see now, this is the one that's contested. And when I say it's contested, I mean it's credibly contested. So CBS News came out, and they had a number of sources, and various other news outlets reported it as well, that the Secret Service agents who were involved in this story are willing to testify under oath that what she says here is not true. Now, I'll also say, and she admits this part of her testimony is not her telling her firsthand experience. This part is her telling a story that she heard from somebody else. So it is quite literally hearsay. It's a game of telephone. Now, having said that, I'm going to play it for you. Then again, I'll give you the reaction. Let's listen.
The president said something to the effect of, "I'm the effing president. Take me up to the Capitol now." To which Bobby responded, "Sir, we have to go back to the West Wing." The president reached up towards the front of the vehicle to grab at the steering wheel. Mr. Engel grabbed his arm, said, "Sir, you need to take your hand off the steering wheel. We're going back to the West Wing. We're not going to the Capitol." Mr. Trump then used his free hand to lunge towards Bobby Engel. And when Mr. Renato had recounted this story to me, he had motioned towards his clavicles. The president said something to the effect...
Okay, so that's what she claims. And again, this is a story that she's hearing secondhand that she's now relaying to the January 6th committee. Here's the problem with the story. The January 6th committee also interviewed the specific Secret Service agents involved in this story who were with Trump that day at that time. Jamie Raskin was asked about that on CNN by Jake Tapper, and Jake Tapper was basically pressing Raskin for evidence and saying, look, could you corroborate this story? Do you have any evidence for it? And Raskin was incredibly evasive. Then we learned immediately after this came out that the two Secret Service agents at the time are willing to testify under oath that this didn't happen, so lunging for the neck didn't happen, grabbing the steering wheel didn't happen, but they do say that the president was irate when he was told, look, you can't go to the Capitol, it's not safe, it's not secure, we're not going to let you do it. And, he probably did say something to the effect of, I'm the effing president, take me where I want to go. So now in the case of this woman, you will have people, and you do have people on the right saying, well, look, this undermines everything she said, she's a liar. I don't believe that. I think that she's being honest with the story that she's relaying, but as is typical when you deal with a game of telephone, it's, you can get stories that are like wildly embellished, for example. So I think this is probably wildly embellished. But again, according to the Secret Service agents who were directly involved with Trump on that day, they say, yeah, he was irate. It's not true that he lunged for somebody's neck or choked them. It's not true that he grabbed for the steering wheel, but he was irate that he couldn't be taken to the Capitol. Okay, so that's that part of the story. Now, again, this is the part that everybody's going to focus on because now this has become the point of contention among the right and the left, or the Democrats and the Republicans, or whatever. But I just want you guys to understand something. It's a little bit of a red herring if we only talk about this part, because there's so many other things that if you're focusing on this part, you're missing the forest for the trees. Okay, so let's continue here. I'll just play this one for you as well.
I left the office and went down to the dining room, and I noticed that the door was propped open and the valet was inside the dining room changing the tablecloth off of the dining room table. He motioned for me to come in and then pointed towards the front of the room near the fireplace mantle and the TV, where I first noticed there was ketchup dripping down the wall and there's a shattered porcelain.
Okay, just a little pet peeve here. Don't say ketchup. The word is not ketchup. The word is ketchup. Ketchup. Sorry, I know I'm being an asshole.
Plate on the floor. The valet had articulated that the president was extremely angry at the Attorney General's AP interview and had thrown his lunch against the wall, which was causing them to have to clean up. So I grabbed a towel and started wiping the ketchup off of the wall to help the valet out.
Ketchup.
And he said something to the effect of, he's really ticked off about this. I would stay clear of him for right now. He's really, really ticked off about that.
Okay, so again, what she's referring to here, Bill Barr does an interview, I guess it was with the AP, where he comes out and says, there's no evidence of election fraud that would have thrown this election in the other direction. In other words, Trump lost the election. Biden won the election. This is Trump's attorney general saying this, Bill Barr. That made Trump incredibly angry, undermining the narrative that he's trying to build. And so threw his lunch across the wall. Now, she also testified that this is something that versions of it happened a number of times, throwing a tablecloth or, screaming at people, whatever. Hutchinson recalled a confrontation between White House counsel Pat Cipollone and Meadows on the afternoon of January 6th, in which the attorney urged Meadows to get Trump to intervene in the ongoing riot, which had breached the Capitol by the time they spoke. I don't effing care that... this is the other big part that I wanted to talk about right here. I'll just play this video for you.
When we were in the offstage announce area tent behind the stage, he was very concerned about the shot, meaning the photograph that we would get, because the rally space wasn't full. One of the reasons, which I've previously stated, was because he wanted it to be full and for people to not feel excluded because they'd come far to watch him at the rally. And he felt the mags were at fault for not letting everybody in. But another leading reason, and likely the primary reason, is because he wanted it full and he was angry that we weren't letting people through the mags with weapons, what the Secret Service deems as weapons and our weapons. But when we were in the offstage announce tent, I was part of a conversation. I was in the vicinity of a conversation where I overheard the president say something to the effect of, I don't effing care that they have weapons. They're not here to hurt me. Take the effing mags away. Let my people in. They can march to the Capitol from here. Let the people in. Take the effing mags away.
So, again, just to summarize that story real quick, when Trump gave his speech, he didn't like that the crowd size wasn't big enough for him. The Secret Service had been not allowing people near Trump who had weapons. There were a lot of people who had weapons who showed up on January 6th. And Trump was like, look, I don't effing care. Take the mags away. Let them in. So the mags are it's the metal detectors that, people have to go through in order to get in the vicinity of Trump. He's like, they're not here to hurt me. Let them in. Okay, but they're almost certainly there to potentially hurt others. These are the same people who then went on soon thereafter to chant, hang Mike Pence. Come on, man. Come on. Hutchinson said that then White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows wanted to go to the war room organized by Roger Stone and former Trump National Security Advisor Michael Flynn on January 5th. So they wanted to be in the war room as all this was going down. Huh. Interesting. Here, another video for you. Oh, this is another one that's a little bit of a bombshell. There were whispers about this previously that Trump had maybe said some things that were way over the line when discussing Mike Pence and the fact that he didn't want to overthrow the election, and now we have this testimony.
I remember Pat saying something to the effect of, Mark, we need to do something more. They're literally calling for the vice president to be effing hung. And Mark had responded something to the effect of, you heard him, Pat. He thinks Mike deserves it. He doesn't think they're doing anything wrong. To which Pat said something, this is effing crazy. We need to be doing something more. Briefly stepped into Mark's office. And when Mark had said something to the effect of, he doesn't think they're doing anything wrong, knowing what I had heard briefly in the dining room, coupled with Pat discussing the hang Mike Pence chants in the lobby of our office, and then Mark's response, I understood there to be the rioters in the Capitol that were chanting for the vice president to be hung.
Let me pause here on this point. As rioters chanted, hang Mike Pence, the President of the United States, Donald Trump, said that, quote, Mike deserves it, and that those rioters were not doing anything wrong.
Wow. Mike Pence is a guy who was loyal to Donald Trump every step of the way. Now, by the way, even if he wasn't, it doesn't matter. You don't think he deserves to be hung, obviously. But this is a guy who stuck by Trump's side every single step of the way. This is a guy supposed to be Mr. I'm an evangelical Christian. I'm a pure man. And then when we heard Trump on tape saying, I grab him by the pussy, I don't even wait, Mike Pence stayed by his side. Stayed by his side. With every horrendous policy decision, well, to be fair, Mike Pence supports all those horrendous policy decisions, tax cuts for the rich, assassinating an Iranian general who's currently fighting ISIS, all those things. Stood by his side. All the turnover in the administration and the personal backs and forths and all that stuff. Mike Pence was right there. The one thing he said, look, I'm not going to do it. I can't do it. I don't even have the authority to do it, even if I wanted to do it, is that he wouldn't completely overthrow American democracy to help this petty man's ego. And because of that, Trump says, yeah, Mike deserves this. He deserves people chanting that Mike Pence should be hung, or hanged, however you say it, and they have a noose out there. And they were violently breaking into the Capitol, breaking windows, etc. He says, yeah, Mike deserves it. Don't tell me that this isn't overwhelming evidence in the direction that Donald Trump is deeply authoritarian and he's a wannabe dictator. There's no doubt about it. And by the way, just so everybody understands, this is how it always works. It always works like this. Usually the people who become the most authoritarian and the most dictatorial scream and whine and shriek and moan and swear up and down that, no, I'm the victim. I'm the victim. We're the victims. The MAGA movement is the victims. I'm the victim. An election was stolen from me. It was unfair. It's not right. We have to fight back. You just going to sit there and take it, or are you going to fight back? So they frame it as if it's defensive. Well, how are you going to say this is defensive? Hanging Mike Pence because he followed his conscience and the letter of the law? He had conservative Republican judicial experts that he consulted with, and they told him in no uncertain terms, this is all nonsense. What Trump's saying is nonsense. There were over 60 court cases about the election, and Trump lost virtually every single one of them. And the one or two that he won were on procedural nonsense that wouldn't have changed the outcome of the election. We had the Arizona audit because they swore, oh my God, there's fraud and Trump really won this state. Well, we had an Arizona audit. And not only did Biden win, he won by more than we thought he won by on election day. So what are we doing? What are we having a conversation here about? Well, Trump started to believe the thing that would help his ego. He listened to the idiots like Mike Lindell, who was a former crackhead, and now he's just addicted to conspiracy theories. He started believing that guy, believing Sidney Powell, believing Michael Flynn. These guys are cranks. They don't know what the fuck they're talking about. They're working backwards from their conclusions. They're either in QAnon or QAnon adjacent. Trump believes that because it makes him feel good, and he's willing to stand by and passively support a bunch of maniacs saying, hang Mike Pence. See, this is what I'm talking about, guys. I don't know if they're going to get any criminal charges out of this whole January 6th thing. In fact, I tend to doubt it. Trump always seems to get away with whatever the fuck he does. But is this having an impact politically? Oh, you bet your ass cheeks it does. You bet your ass cheeks it does. Every drip, drip, drip coming out of this is making him more and more politically not viable. Then we get this. This is another very interesting one.
Mr. Pompeo reached out to have the conversation with Mr. Meadows in case he hadn't heard the discussions amongst cabinet secretaries. And from what I understand, it was more of a, this is what I'm hearing. I want you to be aware of it. But I also think it's worth putting on your radar because you are the chief of staff. You're technically the boss of all the cabinet secretaries. And, you know, if conversations progress, you should be ready to take action on this. Like, I'm concerned for you and your positioning with this. Reach out to me if you have any questions or, like, I could be helpful with you at all.
Wow. So they're saying, this tweet lays it out here for you. Hutchinson says that after January 6th, former Secretary of State Pompeo and others called her and then Chief of Staff Mark Meadows to inform them that the cabinet officials were considering invoking the 25th Amendment to remove former President Trump from office. His closest allies, his cabinet, the people who were with him for his odious agenda every step of the way, were like, this dude has lost his mind. He's not stable. He can't be the president. We might invoke the 25th Amendment, which would be, that'd be historic. That'd be monumental. Wow. When you get somebody like Mike Pompeo, again, a deep ally of Donald Trump, when you get him to float that, things are way, way out of whack. Let's see what else we got here. Officer Daniel Hodges, who was crushed in a doorway while guarding the U.S. Capitol's West Front on January 6, wrote, "Donald Trump set me, my colleagues, Congress, and the vice president up." Democratic lawmakers responded to Hutchinson's testimony, with some calling on the Justice Department to hold former President Trump accountable. So like I said, that one part of the testimony is hearsay. It's being contested. You have Secret Service agents saying, look, I was there, and I will swear under oath that didn't happen. But they do say he was irate, and the rest of this stuff is not being contested. Now, by the way, a lot of Republicans are trying to play defense on this. You know who hasn't said a word to slam his former aide? Mark Meadows. Which means Mark Meadows agrees with what his former top aide, his former chief of staff, is saying here. Wow. I have one more for you. Or actually, I'm sorry, I have two more for you. This one is something. So let's read this here. This was on C-SPAN. This is something that was brought up in the back and forth during the hearings. Quote, this is a witness statement, quote, "What they said to me is, as long as I continue to be a team player, and they know that I'm on the team, I'm doing the right thing. I'm protecting who I need to protect. I'll continue to stay in good graces in Trump world, and they have reminded me a couple of times that Trump does read transcripts, and just to keep that in mind as I proceed through my depositions and interviews with the committee." This, without a doubt, is witness tampering. Without a doubt, it's that. Now, again, I'm sure you can make a list of 10 crimes that Donald Trump committed in the course of all this stuff. Will he go down on any of them? Well, I tend to doubt it. I do. But politically, this is having a colossal impact. And you know who likes this more than anybody else? Ron DeSantis. He's sitting in the corner going, yummy, yummy in my tummy, baby. Batter up, babe. Batter up. I'm right here. Okay, now I have one more for you. This is something else. Okay. So Mike Flynn, talking to the January 6th committee. Is he going to be intelligent, artful? Is he going to break out like the master sophistry to try to wiggle out of any accountability? Is he going to do anything that would make him win the PR battle? Make him say, see, I'm innocent in all this. You guys are going to love this.
Do you believe the violence on January 6th was justified morally?
Take the fifth.
Do you believe the violence on January 6th was justified morally? I take the fifth. Wait. You're pro-riot? You're pro-attempted insurrection? I take the fifth. You take the fifth about that? Homeboy, that's a softball down the center of the plate. You couldn't get an easier question. Wow. We got more.
The violence on January 6th was justified legally?
Fifth.
Do you think it was justified legally? I plead the fifth. Look, whatever you think of the violence, there's no doubt laws were broken. A number of people have been prosecuted over this. The people who actually committed violence, people who broke the windows, went into the Capitol, started taking pictures of official documents. There were crimes that were committed. There's no doubt about that. I take the fifth.
General Flynn, do you believe in the peaceful transition of power in the United States of America?
The fifth.
Oh, are you kidding me? Do you believe in the peaceful transition of power? I take the fifth. That shows you how far gone this lunatic is. Now, he was a general. I'm sure he was directly involved with coupping certain places, probably in South America. I have no doubt about that whatsoever. This is a guy who's now wearing it on his sleeve. And remember, this is one of them who has gone down that QAnon rabbit hole, and so he's all in, dog. He's probably part of the, what'd they call it? It's not Ultra MAGA. That was the Biden labeling of the Trump movement. There's something else. Dark MAGA. He's probably part of the Dark MAGA world, where they're now just open about the fact, yeah, we want Donald Trump to be a dictator. We don't believe in democracy. We want our strong man, and we'll do anything and everything to get to that beautiful end point. I'm amazed at this. It's like, hey, look, to be fair, he clearly doesn't care about optics, and he's being honest. Well, I guess it's not honest because he's saying I plead the fifth. He could have answered those questions in a way that was honest, but either way, Jesus Christ. You know why he may have said this? Perhaps the January 6th committee has dug up various videos of Michael Flynn saying at various times, yeah, I support the violence. Yeah, I think it's legal. Yeah, Trump should be, even if he didn't win, should be put in power. I'm sure they have videos of some of those things, and that's why they're like, Liz Cheney was probably going to ask that, and then whatever he answered, she was going to show the video. But instead, we got this amazing moment. Look, just understand, guys, this is what we're dealing with. This is what we're dealing with. It's true. These people do not believe in a constitutional republic and a representative democracy. They do not believe in what's come to be understood as the American way of life, the American system of governance. Now, I think the system has phenomenal problems. I would do deep reform. But one thing I certainly wouldn't do is just overturn a democratic election where not only did Biden win the Electoral College, he also won the popular vote. These guys they're waving that freak flag, dog. That's what they're doing. Zero principles. Look, their principles are just fascistic. That's what it is. So just understand what's going on here. Understand who these people are. Understand what they believe in. And definitely, look, don't get lost in the weeds, because I know what the discourse is going to be. I know what the dialogue is going to be. People are going to focus on the one thing where it's contested, and they're going to use that to try to undermine all of Hutchinson's testimony. The way I think about it is, even if only 10% of what she said is accurate, just 10%, we're dealing with a psychotic, unhinged, lunatic, maniac, wannabe dictator. Period. And if that's not the main focus here, then again, you're missing the forest for the trees. So there you have it. It was quite an explosive day yesterday, and who knows, maybe we'll get some more going forward. Hey y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.